Right then, so in this one we're going to make a beat. I'm going to show you a couple of free plugins that can help you kick punch through the mix. Just to let you know though, I won't be using free plugins to make the entire beat. So for this one, I'm going to set the tempo to 160 BPM. I'm just going to start by using a simple piano. So I've loaded in Addictive Keys. This is just on the default preset, the Studio Grand. For this beat, I've set the scale to F sharp minor, and I've set the grid here to 1/4, and I've just set it to triplet grid. A lot of the time when I make beats, I use chords to make the melodies, but for this one, I'm actually just going to go straight in with a melody. Just keep it really repetitive. I'm going to utilize some of these half steps, which add tension in. Just keep it really simple. Just going to copy that over. I'm going to change a couple of the notes. Copy that over again. This end one here, I'm just going to set this to repeat again. I'm just going to take all the notes. I'm going to hit randomize on 20. And I'm just going to bring it down a little bit so they hit a little bit softer as well. So from there, I'm just going to take the F sharp and the A's and the F sharp and the G's here. They hit the end of each bar down to the next octave by holding Control and clicking. Bring those down to there, and I'm just going to hit legato on those. I'm just going to set the grid to 1/8, still on triplet. I'm just going to add in some higher notes. Keep those really simple as well and just copy them over. Randomize these, bring them down. So now that I've got some basic notes in, I'm just going to go and find a different sound that I like. Still going to stay within Addictive Keys. Thinking probably this tight studio. I like the way it sounds, so I'm just actually going to take these middle notes there and bring them down a little bit further. So the first thing I'm going to do is EQ out the low end, as this will help the kick and the bass punch through later on. I'm going to take this to about 120. Just going to take out some of the highs as well. I'm also just going to drop the volume on it a little bit. I'm going to add ROM, my favorite reverb. I'm also going to add the initial audio dynamic delay. Adds in a nice little bit of grittiness with the echo. I'm also going to add some slow-mo from initial audio. This is quite similar to halftime. I mean, I like the way that it sounds with it all the way up. I'm just going to bring this down a bit. I'm just going to bring the EQ now to after the plugins, just to make sure there's no low end in the final melody. I'm just going to copy this track now, take off the plugins on this one. I'm going to keep the slow-mo on there. I'm just going to find a different sound to layer that with, thinking maybe a string or a harp. So for this layer, I've actually settled on the classics from the strings in Heat Up 3, and I've made sure that the slow-mo is set to 100% wet. Here's how they sound together. I think later in the beat, I might have a section where I change up the octaves on it, just to give some variation as well. But next, I'm just going to layer in some staccato strings from Heat Up 3. Keeping it really simple. Just going to quantize these now. Going to bring up a few of the velocities that I didn't hit very hard. Once again, just take out the low end of these. There isn't really any in here, but I'll set the EQ on it anyway. Just take out the high ends as well. Just going to drop the volume a little bit more. Make sure they're not the focal point, so they're a bit more in the background. Add some reverb to wash out the sound even more. And a little bit of one of my favorite plugins, which is Murder Melodies. It's a little bit of this reverse. For this kind of beat, I'm just keeping the melody really simple and repetitive. I'm just going to add one more thing in. So I'm just going to record another piano in, but keep it on the high notes. For this one, I'm just going to use some RC20. Turn the noise off though. And bring the volume down even further. There won't be a constant. I'll just bring those in and out as the beat progresses. And now I want to add some drums. I'm just going to start with the snare. The one thing I like to do with my drums is always make sure the velocity is turned up. I'm going to bring the volume of the snare down a little bit. I like the sound of the snare. I can see there's low end frequencies that aren't needed. I'm just going to EQ this out. But this EQ here at the moment is actually set on my whole drum rack. So if I drag it back here, this just brings it to the actual sample itself. The reason why I'm removing the low end on lots of things is to stop the mix getting muddy later on. The next thing I want to add is a hi-hat. Instead of adding that in the drum rack, I'm actually going to add that in a simpler so that I can change the pitch of it. Okay, so I'm liking the way these sound now. Just show you the pattern. Nothing too complicated. A couple of little rolls, a couple of pitch changes. I'm just going to add an open hi-hat next. Actually, just going to change that for a slightly different one. Here's how it sounds. I'm going to add a few little snare hits. I'm just going to keep the velocities on these lower than the regular snare. Might do a triplet roll at the end actually, something like this. Bring the velocities like this. Just going to add a little crash at the start just for an impact. I'll do this on almost every beat. I actually really like the way that sounds, so I'm just going to add it here as well. Sometimes in the crash there's some low end. In this sample there's not. If there is, I'd just EQ that out as well. I think to add a little bit more snap to the snare, I just want to layer it with a clap as well. Bring the velocities down a bit though. So the next thing I want to layer in is an 808. Nothing too complicated, just keep it nice and simple. Maybe add some triplets in. Okay, so I've made my 808 pattern. It sounds like this. However, I don't like how high the 808 is hitting. I'm just going to render the melody and pitch it down. To do this, I'm just going to select all the tracks in the melody. I'm going to right click, go to freeze tracks. Then I'm going to right click and go to flatten. This turns them all into audio. I'm just going to come in and make sure they're all set to complex. Pitch this down a few. Maybe by about 4. Going to do that to all of them. So here's how they sound without the 808s now. So because I've pitched them down by 4, I can just take these down by 4 semitones as well. Making it D minor. Just going to make sure the velocities on the 808s are taken all the way up. So at this point, I'm just going to EQ my 808. Now, I know this might seem counterintuitive. I'm actually just going to add a cut at the low end. I'm just going to set it to 20. Now, most speakers can't replicate below 20 Hertz anyway, so it just allows for more headroom in the mix. Now, don't do this on every one, as sometimes I do find it alters the sound, but often I find it doesn't. So if I can do it, I will. I'm just going to add a kick drum next, and then I'll show you some tips to get the kick to punch through. First thing is sound selection. So choosing a kick that's quite punchy naturally. I want to make sure the velocities are all the way at the top as I put them in. I'm just going to follow the pattern of the 808. Now to get some extra bounce, you can actually take it off the 808 pattern. I know Metro Boomin does this a lot. Gives it an extra little punch where the 808 isn't kicking in. Okay, so to get the kick to punch through in the mix, a lot of the time people will use additive EQ, adding in all kinds of low frequencies. Whilst that does make the kick punch through, it can mess up your headroom for your mix. So now that we've got both the kick and the 808 in, I'm going to show you a few free plugins that can help you kick punch through the mix. So the first is Kilohertz Transient Shaper. Now a lot of people use this in additive mode to add extra punch to the kick, but you can actually use it as a side chain to get a similar effect to kickstart to. If I pull this onto the 808 and I select this side chain, input 3+4, and I put this onto the drum rack, select the kick. As you can see, it's now being triggered every time the kick hits. If we bring the attack down a bit, we just solo the drums along with the 808. And normally, so it just depends on how much you want to take out. But it kind of just ducks it every time the kick triggers it. Of course, you can add some attack on your kick as well using this. So let's give that a try. Just a little bit. So the next effect I'm going to add is a free soft clipper from Kazrog. This is K-Clip 0. You can soften it here. So if you're an Ableton user, you can also use the built-in glue compressor. So if I turn K-Clip off, as long as you have this set to 0, it won't compress it like it normally does. And just select soft here. Just turn this up. Personally though, I like the visual feedback on Kazrog's K-Clip. So another thing we could do is subtractive EQ. So if we have a look where the kick's hitting, so if you double click the EQ, you can see it's around here somewhere. About 50. If we turn that EQ off and we come to the 808, come to our EQ here, set this to 50. We turn the Q up, we can just make a small notch out of it. That'll just carve a little bit of room out of the 808 for the kick to hit through. Another thing we can use is additive EQ. So a lot of the actual punch in a kick is quite higher up. It's not actually in the sub frequencies like people think. So if I just solo that. Scan around for the bit that you think makes it punch through. Quite like it here. Bring the melody up a little bit. It's a bit better balanced now. The only thing left to do now is structure this beat out fully and show you the final result. So here's how it sounds all together. Just some halftime on the intro. Bring some percussion in. Just bring a snare roll in here. As you can hear, the kick's really loud and punchy. Cuts through the mix really well. Change the octave here slightly just for a change. Bring it to a simpler hi-hat here. Use a little break for a transition there. Small transition here. Back into the chorus section. Then just repeats again. Okay, that's it for this one. Hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, don't forget to drop me a like and subscribe. And comment any tips and tricks that you know down below. As always, I've been SK. I'll let YouTube decide some videos for you here. Hope to see you in the next one. Peace.